All right, we're going to start. And if you haven't had a chance yet, you won't see this really well. You can take the quiz, and I'm going to give you another way to get the QR code. There it is. All right. And it takes only 2 minutes. So if you haven't done that yet, you can do it now before we start. And it's not absolutely necessary to go through the workshop having done the quiz. But at some point during the workshop, we'll talk about the results of your quiz. So it might be interesting to know where you are. All right. So a few questions to start with. Not the right. Hold on. There we go. There we go. A quick question. A few questions, really. Are you a human? I'll raise my hand on that one. And hello. And have you experienced an event in your life that is still having some effect on you? And I'll raise my hand again on that one. If you are on the Google Meet with me, just know that as I'm streaming this live on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube, they actually cannot see you. They will see only the screen. They might hear you if you talk, though. All right, so just for privacy purposes. Yes, Deborah. Did you have a question?
Oh no, I was just raising.
Oh, you
my
were
hand.
raising your hand. Excellent. Okay, so are you still holding grudge? Yes, I guess there's at least
Yeah.
one person in the room who's still holding grudge, or guilt, or resentment. All right. So what does that mean? Do you also potentially keep recalling painful memories that sort of can't find a way to brush themselves off? And that's what we're here for. We're here to better understand what's going on. And for the new people who just joined, I will reiterate just to be safe. You can show your camera. I will see you, but I'll be the only one seeing you, and other people in the Google Meet. As I'm streaming live, they cannot see you on the social media platforms, or they cannot see your name. So all is good. So I was asking the question about, are you a human, and do you still hold grudge or guilt or resentment from something that happened to you? And today we're going to go over two things. We might go a little bit over. I'm just giving you a heads up here because this is a new content of my workshop, and I'm exploring giving you a full end-to-end view of the process. So the first part here is to really understand what's going on when we feel stuck. And could it be that this has to do something with trauma? Question mark. And what we know is, for example, childhood trauma, which has been categorized into what we call adverse childhood experiences, not going into too much detail, but it shows that first, the prevalence is really high. And it shows that it has consequences in adulthood. And particularly cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disease, have been shown to be increased when people have more than 4 adverse childhood experiences in their life. Another key component of this is it has a huge economic and societal cost. When you look at these numbers, ACE-related health consequences cost an estimated more than $14 trillion every year in the United States. So there is something to be done. Now, when you see a child in the street or you see children playing in the schoolyard, would you recognize that they had any sort of trauma? And you can venture in giving me an answer here, but I will venture saying, no, you won't see that on their face. If we could see trauma on the face of someone, it would be so much easier because we would be able to take care of them much faster and much earlier in life. And would you recognize it if you see a senior corporate professional, successful in the corporate world, giving a presentation to 200 people? And the answer is likely not, because you won't see that. So let me tell you a quick story. Some of you are already aware of this. But one day, I was still in the corporate world, and I had a meeting with the boss. And that meeting didn't go quite well because what was said to me started to trigger me. And as I got triggered on the other side of that table, and I remember exactly the room, right? When we have some trauma recall, we also get very detailed in our memory of what was surrounding us. I remember the screen on my left. I remember the door on the right. I remember his face and what was said. And also what I remember is being frozen in that moment and thinking, I cannot speak up or defend myself here. I just need to get out the door. And basically what I did that weekend is build my business, form my company for the first time, and start creating a business bank account and basically put everything in motion to be able to get out the door. What I did not do is slam the door shut. I just waited. But that weekend, I wrote down in my journal, I will be out of the company with a severance package by 3 months from now. And 3 months later, I got laid off and I had a package and I was ready. I had my same week, I had my certification for emotional freedom techniques and I got out the door. So this is to explore those two parts of what I want to teach, which is one, we have to take care of ourselves and particularly our past trauma in order to free up space and time in our life to actually be able to build the next chapter. And that moment, that key decision is really a decision, and we'll talk about that today. All right. So what I've done, that was about 2.5 years ago. And since then, I have built a whole business. And basically, it is my mission now to bring you from a state of hardship to a state of happy. And I use the mountain metaphor because it speaks to me in terms of energy. The earth energy is nurturing, and I have based my foundation based on that. All right, so we'll talk about that a little later today. The intention for this particular workshop is twofold. First, talk about putting the weight down, discussing what's really going on, looking at the 5 stages of Kintsugi, and I'll explain what Kintsugi is, and giving you some hints as to what you can do to get moving in your life and change things a little bit. But the second chapter is, once you have started giving yourself some space and time for building something new, then you may need guidance to actually build that next chapter. So we'll look into how do you reconnect with your dreams, with your purpose, with what you actually want to do in life, and then reclaim that clarity that you've been missing and trust that you can take the next step. So that's what the intention of this whole workshop is for today. So let's talk about what's really going on. If you have seen some YouTube videos about the gazelle being chased by a tiger or lion and surviving it, there are some interesting videos out there, which are not AI generated, that show that gazelle, if they escape the threat of dying, they usually go and isolate themselves in a safe space, like under a bush, and tremble for several minutes, if not like half an hour. And that process is a very natural animal process of releasing trauma. And what happens is once they have released that, they go back to grazing their food on the grass and as if nothing had happened. And us humans, we have this ability, believe it or not, but we kind of lost it. And we lost it because we have a brain that thinks, and sometimes it thinks too much. So we'll talk about that. When we are in danger, there are those different, you've heard about the flight-fight response, but there's also that frozen response. And in a gazelle, and I believe that's also happening in humans when you are in actual death threat, the frozen state has two purposes. One is it might reduce your attacker's interest in you. So the gazelle playing dead, or any animal that you see playing dead, is a very effective mechanism to not be of interest as a target. So that's the first one. And the second one might surprise you a little bit more. That play dead actually also releases some hormones in the body that prevents the animal from feeling pain, which means that if they actually get eaten, they don't feel it. And what happens when humans get traumatized is very similar, actually. So what happens when we get trauma, we all go through a series of events in our life, but that doesn't mean we hold that trauma into our body. Usually what's going to happen is the frozen component means that 4 conditions have been met. And those 4 conditions, which you see here with an acronym that could be construed as TAPU, those 4 conditions really determine the high risk of having long-lasting traumatic consequences in your life. And that was very, very critical for me to understand when I started working on my own healing. Threat is the concept of you have a survival threat. It's a threat to your life. There's a component of this could be the end of my life. The second component is feeling lonely in that experience. So you might be attacked by someone else, but that someone is not protecting you. So not only it gets threatening, but you're also alone in that experience. The third component is powerlessness, which means in that moment, the threat has overcome your capacity to either flight or fight. It means you are cornered in a way that you don't have the physical capacity or the mental capacity to go over the threat. And I would say almost most importantly, although all 4 conditions have to be met, the unexpectedness is critical. That means, like a sudden accident, you're not expecting to have an accident when you drive. When the accident happens, it's unexpected. Or if somebody abuses someone else or has, violence against somebody, usually they know each other. And so it's not expected that your spouse would beat you up. So that's the unexpectedness. Those 4 are necessary. So what can it look like? It's interesting because one of my workshops, I said, what could be a life-altering experience? And someone said, the birthing my child. And I was like, well, hopefully that's not a traumatic event. But in fact, it is a life-altering experience. So whether it's an accident, a major surgery, losing someone, or losing your house to an earthquake or a fire, all of these you would recognize as that's big T trauma, okay? But even having a child might not be considered by society as being traumatic. But I was just listening to the radio the other day, and they were talking about how some women really need support when they become mothers because they get lost, they get isolated, and they wonder what can I do? Is it normal? And people are not expecting them to feel that way, so they feel even more lonely in that experience. So those are all life-altering experiences. Some are traumatic, but trauma tends to be life-altering in itself. Now, an interesting piece of insight that I got in the last couple of years as I was training for emotional freedom techniques is your brain actually doesn't make any difference between a threat to your life if it's actual or if it's perceived. So, for example, if you were in a car accident a long time ago, and now every time you hear brakes screeching in the street or another car accident, and you're not involved in that accident, so there's no threat to your life anymore, you might still react exactly the same way as when you had the accident, because your brain recognizes the pattern and is going to ring the alarm bell anyway. What I have discovered over the last few years is three things. One is the issue is never the issue. So when a client comes to me, usually they might have a very explainable issue. It might be an issue with their spouse. It might be financial problems. They might be losing their job. So they come with that stress and they want some support. But what happens is when we start digging a little bit into what's really going on, we identify root causes that are far deeper than the surface issue. And that root cause is generally related to something totally different. And in fact, I could talk for probably a few hours on how the brain is handling these memories and reconnecting current issues to past memories. But our consciousness cannot recognize that connection because the unconscious brain does it in a very weird way. So more details, if you have questions, I'm happy to talk about that. Now, another thing I discovered, and particularly with the modality that I learned, was that this doesn't need to take years. I gave you an example of me in the corporate world, but I had other issues that I had to deal with. And I carried that burden for probably close to 50 years. I know, I don't look my age. And through those new modalities that I discovered, I actually cleared all of it within weeks, like a couple, 2-3 months maybe, in a few sessions. I didn't do long therapy. I tried therapy before, but it doesn't have to take years. And then a very big component of this in my insights was to discover that you actually don't need to talk about it. So if you had a big T trauma in your past and you've been looking for people to help you and you didn't know where to turn, or you went to some therapy and you had to talk about it and you basically didn't bring it up, it's important to know that there are modalities where you don't need to talk about what happened to you in order to fix it, to process it. And that was, at the end of the day, the discovery that trauma is overcomable. And that's what I tell my clients. There's hope. You can process what happened to you that keeps holding you back right now. So I then found this analogy with kintsugi. Kintsugi is this wonderful Japanese art that you probably have seen with this little vase with the golden seams. It basically is the concept that we have far more possibilities in life, regardless of our situation, conditions, and circumstances, if we let the process of healing happen. And so I'll walk you through what does that mean from a trauma-informed standpoint, and then I'll be looking at, if you took the quiz, we'll be looking at your results. So the first stage, I'm going to go one by one here. The first stage is if you are in an accident right now, you are a victim of an accident. It's happening to you right now. It could be someone who is in a very toxic relationship. So although it's not a one-off event, it might still be happening right now. And so the main emotion here is going to be fear for your life. And unfortunately, most of the time, there's inaction because we are in a frozen state. And that frozen state, remember, the gazelle plays dead to survive. So the inaction is not an inaction because we just don't want to change anything, but it's because it's protecting us right now. And so that's a 911 situation. That is not somewhere where you're going to start looking for support through therapy or EFT. You probably need urgent support. So that's important to recognize if you are in that stage. When you have survived that event, let's imagine it's still a car accident. It just happened and you walked away alive. So you're a survivor of that accident. And this is the recognition that it just happened to me. The emotion might be a little bit of denial at first, and then depression, and you might also get angry at yourself, angry at the person who crossed you on the road, whatever it is. But there is, and it's green because it's the element of anger in the 5-element philosophy. I won't go there today, but it's basically, what happened to me, right? If you have any question, by the way, you can always put that in the chat, and I'll take any questions at the end. Okay, next is not only you have survived the event, but you have kind of reconnected with life in a way or another, and that can be considered thriving. It could be that you are very successful in your family life, in your professional life. You just doing day after day. You know you're doing the work. But if the trauma has not been processed yet, you might still be in a mode of something has not been fixed yet, and it needs to be fixed, but I don't necessarily know how. So the thriver might still hold guilt and grief and maybe still a little bit of resentment, although that could be on the survivor side. And this looks like this. What must be fixed means a thriver might be thriving in their life, but they might try to find ways to get reparation, to get compensation from what happened. That's it's, you go to lawsuits, you go to trying to get repair. And then what happens is some people go, not everybody goes into that phase, but some people might go into an advocate phase. And the advocate is switching a little bit into what must be protected? What can I do to prevent others from experiencing what I'm experiencing? So the advocate might be in a worry mode emotionally, worry for other people, start turning outward to other people, and so it's actionable. It's a little bit like a superhero syndrome. That doesn't mean the trauma has been fully processed, by the way, because it's almost like another way of surviving is to helping others while still having those triggers coming from past experiences. And then what happens? What if you could transcend all of that and become what I call kintsugi, which is that beautiful vase that has been repaired with golden seams to the point that spiritually it becomes almost transparent. And this is where you are in a mode of healing. You are healed, and you can start healing and helping others. You have peace, you can provide guidance, and it's all about what can be prevented, but not in an advocate way, more in a more holistic, more universal way. So if you took the quiz, where are you on that path is the question. And I'll keep this on for just half a minute so you can look at it. And if you took the quiz, maybe you could share in the chat what was your score. I'm going to check the chat. And if you didn't take the quiz, it's fine. But it's worth exploring. I'll put the QR code again later. So now that you know those 5 stages, the question is, where are you on that path? But also, where would you like to be? What do you aspire to be? And this process is not linear. How do we go from feeling broken because something happened in our life and we feel everything is happening to us, to a stage where we're fully processed and we feel like we can help others? It looks like this. It is not linear. And in fact, even throughout one day, you might be toggling back and forth between one or two of those. So if you take the quiz, you'll find out that you might have 2 of these elements that are higher than others in your mind. And that means you might be actually toggling between the 2. So now, what can you do when you know now that there's something that your brain has got you into, and you now know that it actually is doing its work as a primitive brain? Again, lots of things we can say on that. But basically, your brain is just doing its job. It's just trying to keep you safe. However, by trying to keep you safe, it puts you into these alarm system mode, and it's really hard to break that cycle. So let's look at what you can do. Well, the first thing you can do is know that it's possible, that trauma is overcomable. There is hope. There is hope. And the issue is never the issue. So if consciously you're trying to figure out, oh, I'm feeling this way, so it must be because of what happened, your consciousness is not going to be able to make those connections very easily. So you may need a modality that helps you uncover the actual real root cause issue. Know that it doesn't take years, and know that you don't need to talk about it. But believing that it's possible is essential to your healing, because as long as you have the thought, I'm doomed, this is the way I am, this is what my life looks like from now on, this will never change, the more you think that way, the more true it will become. So even if you are not ready to say, I understand it's possible, I'm going to make a decision to change, maybe a little part of your brain can agree that I know it's possible because I went through that. And so you can maybe rely on me to make that decision. The autonomous nervous system, as I was saying, does its job. It's just keeping you safe, and unfortunately, it sometimes it looks like the cat on the left. It's keeping you safe by making you be in a fight mode sometimes. And a lot of us these days get triggered by a lot of input signals, whether it's the news, social media, pollution out there, ultra processed foods. There's tons of those elements, the things we breathe, the things we listen to, the things we watch. And they keep us in a heightened mode. And they keep triggering, because the issue is not the issue, they keep triggering our nervous system to fight. And that means we are in high sympathetic overdrive in our nervous system, and we have a hard time bringing it down. And if we could all be like the dog on the right side, wouldn't that be wonderful, right? So what can we do to get more of that dog stage? Then I have nothing against cats, mind you. The reverse could have been true. And it's also important to know that there are ways to balance out those 2 opposite side of the coin in our nervous system. One side of the coin is sympathetic, and it's like, ugh. And the other side of the coin is parasympathetic, and it's like, meditation. And between the 2, we need to find the right balance. And the reason why meditation, tapping, yoga, EMDR, other modalities work is because our brain has the ability to heal, has the ability to rewire itself into better pathways. Neuroplasticity, as it's called, exists, and it is a possibility of rewiring your brain. And that's why trauma is overcomable, because you can change the connections that your brain is making. And by changing those connections, you basically change your past. You change your experience of the past. And then you have more space and time to build something new. So find out, the second point is, once you know that this is possible, the second hint is find out what works for you. I'm not going to be here to say EFT is the best modality out there. Everyone should do EFT, although I think it's true. But some people will go much more into somatic experiences. Some people will need therapy. Some people will need medications. But there's a combination here that you need to find for yourself. Everyone is on their own path. So explore. And some of you may have explored already. Some of you may have gone through so many different things and so many different retreats. And then you get well for a little bit. And then it just, the whole life catches back. So just explore, be an explorer, be an adventurer, and find what works for you. And then the third hint is, and again, we could do a whole workshop on this, establish daily habits that make your body-mind connection more connected and holistic. And oops, I don't need reminders from a doorbell. And make sure that those habits are enjoyable. There's nothing more counterproductive than deciding to go to the gym, although you don't like to go to the gym, and forcing yourself to do something you don't like just because you should. Because the likelihood is that you're going to do it for like 2 weeks and then you're going to drop. You'll find an excuse to not do it. So exercise could be just a walk every day. And it doesn't have to be 20 minutes or 30 minutes. It could be just 5 minutes, just one baby step at a time. Hydrate yourself, drink water, journal. And I have a journal template if any of you is interested. I have that in Basecamp. And then eat good, vibrant foods that have good energy. Remember all the things you put in your body, whether it's food, nutrition, water, liquids, sounds, images, air, light, all of those, the chemicals, the drugs that you might take, medications, all of those impact your body. Having good sleep is extremely important. So if you don't have a good sleep habit, maybe find a meditation app or learn to meditate. And again, I can teach that into Basecamp. I have explored all of these and I keep exploring because it's not, the journey continues. It's not something that you do one off and then, that's done. In fact, I also like to suggest that you create habits with the seasons. You don't have to create a habit that you do all year long. Like decide a habit that would make you happy, so you'll more likely do it, and decide that you're going to do that for 12 weeks. Maybe over the spring or just the summer, and see what happens then, and just keep exploring. All right. So that was chapter number 1, Put the Weight Down, which goes towards understanding what's going on, understanding that our brain functions in a certain way to protect us, that we can make a decision to change our life if we believe that it is possible. And then we go into finding ways to get better and keep exploring. Now, let's imagine that you have put the entire weight down, and so now what? You might have seen all these manifestation apps or workshops or videos online. And when I was in stress mode in my life for many, many decades, I would watch those videos on manifestation and I would be like, sure. And that's why I have chapter 1, right? Because you can't skip that. You can't just pretend everything's okay and I'm going to do, oh, yeah, my life is getting better every day and it's going to work out. It doesn't work that way. So I'm going to share with you what actually works. And we're going to reconnect with your dreams, reclaim clarity, and trust to take the very next step today. The pain of a problem, like how you feel now in your life, and the burning desire for something new, like having a dream or a purpose, something that you aspire to change in your life. Those two are actually good feelings to have because that will trigger you in changing, in actually taking steps and creating new results in your life. So just having a problem is not enough, but recognizing that you have this problem and then imagining what's next for you. That's how you can start to change. So who would you love to be? Not despite what happened, but because of what happened in your life. If you transcend what happened in your life, maybe you can find this new identity, right? Who would you love to be? What would you love to have? What would you love to do? So before we go into the 3 steps, I will ask you, have you ever achieved a goal or a dream in the past? And likely, hopefully, some of you will raise their hands and tune into what you achieved. And now just think for a minute. Go back to all the way when you wanted to achieve it, but you had not even started it. Did you know how you would achieve that dream? And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to discuss this. Have you achieved a dream? But then when you go back to when you decided to achieve that dream, did you know how you would do it? And I'll give you a personal example that some of you have already heard about. I had a dream to come to the United States. I started that dream when I was 15 years old. And it took some time, but I never doubted that I could do it. And yes, it took some time, but I did do it. And the key here is that from the moment I decided this, when I was 15, there's a number of events in my life that happened where I made very specific choices that led me to get one step closer to being in the United States one day. And so if that goes back to this belief that you know something's possible and you have no idea how you're going to get there. That's why it took me a while. Remember that you are far more capable than you know. This picture of an orchid is actually a real picture that I took in my own kitchen. I had an orchid that died, and I had the pot in my kitchen table for several months. It was pathetic because, I could have trashed that pot for many times around. And then one day, I found a little bulb that was growing, and then it became this beautiful orchid that bloomed again out of nowhere. I was not watering it. I was not doing anything to it, and it came back. And that's what we are. We are all in that expensive energy, in an expensive universe. We all have that potential. So you are capable of far more than you know. And if you remember when you did that dream a long time ago, you didn't know how, you still achieved it. So the how happened, whether you knew what it was or not. 2 signals for your growth. The discontent that we talked about before, where you are now in life, you might not be happy with all your results. And then this longing for something better. Again, essential to creating new results. So, do you want to live your life by default or by design? And we could spend a lot of time on this. This is a key to deciding to have new results. To decide, I'm going to be in charge of my life. And when we decide for new results, we look at where we are now and we look at where we would love to be, and we put the how on the parking lot. That's absolutely essential. Because if you start thinking about the how, your brain is going to pull you back right away. We're going to do a quick exercise. There are many ways you can slice life. The Brave Thinking Institute does that segmentation of health and well-being, love and relationships, vocation, which can be your work, but also how you provide value to the world, your purpose in life. And then the fourth dimension is time and money freedom. So for the sake of time today, we'll go through one area of your life. So in the chat, maybe you can share with me right now, is there, of these 4 areas, is there one in particular that you would love to improve? And once you have made that choice, we'll go into a quick self-assessment in that dimension. And as we go through this exercise, Howard Thurman said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. It's not about what others are expecting of you. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. What would you love? And then go ahead and do that. Because the world needs more people to come alive. Energetically, it makes so much more sense than chugging for something, a goal, a supposedly aspirational goal that is actually not making you alive. A lot of us, through this education system we have in the world today that has not caught up after 100 years and many wars and COVID, and we haven't changed the educational system at all. We teach people to go for what they should go for. You have to go to college. You have to find a job. You have to do this. You have to do that. We don't ask the kids, what would you love? And that's really something that we need to shift. So very quickly, there's 2 concepts I want to share before we go through the 3 steps. And I apologize, I'm going to have to go a little bit fast over these concepts. But be assured that if you join Basecamp at some point, you will have a lot more time to explore these. Concept number 1, which I alluded to a little bit already, is our thoughts determine how we feel about things. And how we feel about things is going to determine how we behave, our own actions. And guess what? Our actions are going to lead to our own results. And so when you think about this formula, our thoughts are the starting point for our current results. Those thoughts may have been conscious for part of them. Most of them are unconscious. And in fact, 90% of your thoughts and decisions you make every day are unconscious. It's new, it's more recent neuroscience research, but we know that now. A lot of the things we do, it's predeterministic, but a lot of the things we do and think throughout the day are not conscious. So if you want to change your results, you have to change your thoughts. And in order to do this consciously, concept number 2 is notice what you're noticing. Start taking some altitude from your reactions, your feelings, and notice that you can notice them. Raise your own self-awareness. And in another workshop, I would ask you to do a quick meditation with me. We unfortunately don't have the time to do that right now. But we sensorize our own body. We notice what we're noticing inside our body. And then we notice that if we can do that with our body, we can also do that with our thoughts. So one of these key aspects of changing your life is to start noticing how you're thinking about yourself, how you're thinking about your life. All right, so I just said that. Quick life assessment. I will give you maybe 1 minute to do this. I will ask you to choose one of those. So somebody said purpose. Someone said vocation. So two of you said basically vocation is the expression of yourself in the world. Take 1 minute now and take a piece of paper and write down, what are your results today? Maybe 5 bullet points. Okay, I'll give you that time. And maybe we'll focus on purpose for everybody then. Maybe you have a job, but you know you're meant for more. Or maybe you don't have a job and you're looking for something that will inspire you, that will allow you to express what you have to say in the world. And unfortunately, again, sometimes we get into a career that doesn't help us express who we are. And we force fit ourselves into a mold that is difficult to get out of. I was in the corporate world for many, many years, and the golden shackles really exist. It was, how can I get out of a situation where I'm not necessarily fulfilled and happy in the corporate world? However, it brings me time and money freedom in a way, or more money freedom at the time than time freedom. But then you get stuck. And I knew there was something more I wanted to do, but it gets really difficult to change that unless you get some support. So once you have written down your bullet points, overall, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is, I am not happy with those results. That is not where I want to be in my life today. I want to change this. Versus 5 is, oh, I'm fully fulfilled, which, if you chose that dimension for your life assessment, it means they might be not a 5. So just doing that life assessment, you can do it with all the other 4 dimensions after the workshop and realize what's going on in your life. Like, just be aware of those areas where you're not fulfilled. Because then we'll look into what can you do with that. And the other question you want to answer is, how long have you been in that state of not getting the results you want, not being happy with vocation? And also, what has it cost you so far? So maybe it's been 2 years, maybe it's been 20 years, but what's the cost? And it's not just a financial cost. It could be an emotional cost. It could be a family happiness cost. So write it down so you have a record of it, and then you can go back to the other dimensions later on. So what we talked about is making the choice to have results by design. Notice what we're noticing. We do the life assessment, and now I'm going to share with you the 3 steps that follow. Are you ready? All right. Step number 1, design your dream. And these are all steps that are built through the Dream Builder program that I teach through expeditions, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So I'll give you those 3 steps briefly, so you see how it flows into expedition. Designing your dream is all about, imagine that your dream is like a house you're going to build. And if you were to go to a constructor and say, or to Spirit, or whatever your choice is, and say, hey, could you build the dream of my house, please? What do you think they're going to reply? Oh, yeah, I am a mind reader, and I'm going to build the dream of your house knowing exactly what you're talking about. No, they're not going to do that. They're going to ask you, where do you want to build? What's the surface of your house? What material? How many rooms? How many outlets? How many windows? What's the size of the windows you want? Did you talk to your architect? Well, what about you are the architect? So when you think about the dream, you have to be as clear, as detailed, as sensorized as possible. Know exactly, almost to, so I'm taking the example of a house, but your dream could be a job. Your dream could be um, um, being a business owner. Your job could be traveling the world. It needs to be detailed. So when you start dreaming, the tool here is to do a time machine. And some of you on the call have done time machines and love it. It's about projecting yourself in a 3-year time frame from now. And we choose 3 years because the brain cannot really imagine what 3 years is about. Your brain can imagine 1 year and then pull you back. But 3 years, it's just fuzzy for the unconscious brain. So then you go into imagining you are in 2029 and it's May 13, 2029, and everything that was supposed to happen. Everything worked out. You don't care about the how it worked out, but you imagine your life now as it is, with who you are, who you're with, what you're doing, where you are in the world, and everything has worked out. And you look at the colors, you look at what you're wearing, you look around you, you see nature, whatever it is in your dream, you get that clarity and you write it down. So we won't do that exercise here, but this is one of the key tools of that brave thinking process. And remember to always ask yourself, not what I should do or what I'm expected to do, but what would I really love in my life? Remember, you're far more powerful than you think. So if you answer that question and you say, I am so happy and grateful now that I am over there and I can see the flowers in my garden and I see what I'm wearing and my partner is with me, smiling at me, bringing me a cup of tea, and the ceramic is beautiful. All of that is details that you want to have in that dream. And then once you're done with that, you do that for a few minutes every day. And you write down at the end, you say it out loud, this or something even better still. Because then you open your heart to what the universe can bring that you haven't even thought about. So that's the first step. We design our dream with clarity, the blueprint. And then step number 2 is, we need to decide for that dream. It's not enough to just have a map of it. We need to make the decision. Because if we're still thinking, it's not going to happen anyway, it's not going to happen anyway. So deciding for your dream, again, is if you achieved a goal in the past, you know that you can do it. And you need to make that decision because that decision will influence your results. Remember to suspend the how and remember to make the decision. In the Dream Builder, we also test the dream. We make sure that it fulfills certain criteria to make sure it is what you would love. Sometimes if we do it by ourselves, we end up with a dream we think is the dream. But really, if we were to test the dream, we would realize it's not a dream. So it's important to go through the process. Now, that was step number 1 and step number 2. Step number 3 is defend your dream. So now, imagine that you have a dream on the field of your mind, and it's like a rose or a little small plant growing out of the ground. But then in your mind, you have also all these other thoughts. And in the Little Prince, these other thoughts were like baobabs. They were threatening his rose. And what you want is to protect that dream. And maybe if you have a dream, when you think about it, when you tune into it energetically, you're like, yes, I can do this. And you get all excited and enthusiastic and everything is like possible, like a kid, right? And I would bet you that most of the time, the second stage after that is like, but how am I going to do this? You will find excuses. My kids need me right now. I need to retire first. How am I going to do that? The how comes back. I don't have what it takes. I don't have the diploma. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. This is always going to be a good reason, right? If you heard this in your head, you know it's happening. And it's not whether it's going to happen. It will happen. And it happens pretty fast usually. Those are all paradigms. That's what we call paradigms. And what are those paradigms? There's three, at least we discussed three here. One is delay or distraction. You have a dream to take a course and get a new degree, and then you come home after work and you're like, I just need to do the laundry first. I need to cook dinner for the kids. I'm going to have to do this or that, mow the grass, whatever it is. There's always a good reason not to get to the training that you had committed to. Or dissuasion. Dissuasion is it really a dream? Like, am I really meant for this? Or it's probably not in the works for me anyway. What am I thinking of having this dream? So that's dissuasion. We persuade ourselves that we're not worth it. And then DEFCON. DEFCON is fight, flight, or freeze. Our brain says, ding, 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 ding. I don't want to change. Hold on a second. You are safe right here, right now. You have survived all these years without doing this dream. So I'm going to throw everything at you to prevent you from changing. So every time you feel those emotions, delay, distraction, dissuasion, DEFCON, it's actually good news. Why? Because it means your brain knows that you're on your way to changing your life. You're on your way to expanding what's in your life. And that fear that you're going to have is actually a prerequisite for achieving your dream. And it's not just the fear, it's the failures that you will inevitably go through. And some people give up. The failure is not to try and fail. The failure is when you stop trying. And you have all succeeded in walking. So you know that when we learn to walk, and you watch babies do that now, retrospectively, you're like, oh my goodness, they have passion about this, right? They try and fall and try and fall again and again and again until what? Until they find their balance. And sometimes they need some support. I love this picture because it shows sometimes you need a guide. You need an encouragement from other people. The longing and the discontent of being on the ground and not being able to reach that toy by yourself. The longing for, I want to do what these two-leg walkers do. We all went through that. And other people that are famous went through a lot of failures. But what made them go to succeed eventually is because they kept trying. Whether it's Oprah or the Chicken Soup for the Soul, rejected 144 times to get a loan to start the business. Or this guy, Steven Spielberg, without him persisting in going to film school, we wouldn't have those beautiful movies he made. So defending your dream is so important. And that means that part of you that wants to go forward and that part of you that wants to play small, that fear is in the middle. And we want to say, fear, not today. Give a name to your fear and say, not today. I'll make an appointment with you in 2 days and we can discuss that. Put the fear on the side, put the how on the side, and just take one step. And we're going to talk about that. When you feel that fear or those paradigms that show up, you be aware of what's going on. Notice what you're noticing. Take a deep breath. And then go back to the question, what would I love? What is it that I would actually love? And then you take action. And so what you can do right now is take a few seconds to say you tuned into part of your dream, what is one thing you could do right after this workshop? Not tomorrow, not next week, not sometime in the future. It doesn't have to be a huge step. It could be one little thing you can do. One internet search, call a friend for advice, make an appointment with whoever, buy a book, whatever it is. Decide right now to take an action. Because when you make that intention, your energy is going to go in the direction of your dream. And that's the key to this whole process. Put the hound aside, let fear not have you, and go into action. So the 3 steps to getting back on track, once you have put the weight down and have more time and space to create a new life for yourself, you design your dream with clarity. You decide for it, make the decision, and make sure you pay attention to your thoughts and defend it with tooth and nails every day. So that's what we have gone through today. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'm ready to take any questions. What I'm doing now is basically help you from this state of hardship that may come from a long time ago or more recently, because you went through some type of life-altering event. And I'll bring you to a state of happy, or at least happier, with this path to transformation. And what I do is multiple modalities. I do emotional freedom techniques. I have a private community called Basecamp that you can actually try for a month for free today. And then I bring people through an expedition for 12 weeks with weekly calls. And we go through all these stages of building the dream and bridging across all these obstacles and transforming your life in 12 weeks. What people have experienced, some of you are the authors of these words here, is transformation in many different layers. It only happens if you do the work. I'm only here to guide you. I'm not going to change your life. That's not what a coach is. But you have the power in you, and I can be there to remind you and give you the tools that you can use and reuse in this very robust framework. And then I also add tapping into this. So this is what it looks like at the end of 12 weeks. There was another person that didn't make it to the last call, but I'm very proud of them. And one action that you can take is to, if you have questions, just schedule some time with me. We can talk for 30 minutes. Whether you're going to decide to work with me or not, doesn't matter. I'll give you everything I can in terms of my advice, what I think is going on, and what you can do. And then if you want to join Basecamp, today you have access to Basecamp for a whole month for free. If it doesn't work, please let me know, because this has been set up. It should be working. I tested it. You never know with those systems. So don't hesitate to reach out. And then I'll share, if you still have the time to stay with me. Sorry, it's a bit late. I will share with you a story of a dream achieved. So I call it the miso story. It's not in the order. I'll have to put it like this. So a good friend of mine got to our house one day back in 2013 and helped us make miso. And you know, miso is fermented food. It's extremely healthy for you. We made a huge batch, probably a dozen jars, and he kept some and another friend of mine kept some. So we had like 15 jars, and we stored them, and you're supposed to not touch them for at least 2 years. 4 years pass, and we still have miso in our shelves. A few of them, they get darker as you go. It's beautiful. The color changes, the taste changes. It's beautiful. And then we were getting down to the last 2 or 3 jars. And then I learned that my friend Jin passed in Japan while on a trip to visit his mom. And I was not able to go to the funeral. she came to New York to do a ceremony for her son as well in the US, and then brought his ashes back home. And I didn't have a chance to meet her. And so my dream was like, I had this when I looked at the last 2 jars on my shelf, I put one jar on the side and I said to my family, you don't touch that jar. And I had this dream that came out of, I don't know, nowhere, to bring that last jar that was touched by my friend Jin to his mom in Japan. And I had no idea how to do that. However, I was in the corporate world, and at that time, I was traveling to Japan from time to time. And so my next trip came up. I'm hoping not to make this story too long, but long story short, I had no idea because I was going to Japan, but I was going through China, and I didn't want to carry miso, which is live food, probably illegal to bring to China, and get it taken from me. So I had all these obstacles in front of me. How do I bring miso to Japan? And as I was just tuning into this vision of bringing that miso into her hands, I had a succession of things that happened. A friend of mine said, Japanese American who was going home, she said, I could bring you miso. I'm going directly to Tokyo, so I can bring you miso, and I'll bring it to the corporate office, to the fridge in the corporate office, so it stays cool. So that one obstacle gone. And then she was not living, that mother of Jin was not living in Tokyo. So I was like, I don't even know where it is, how to get there. Next thing you know, a colleague of mine says, well, by the way, when you are in Tokyo, I will actually be traveling to that city where this mom lives, and I can connect with her and make sure she's available. So he basically made the appointment for me. And then he gave me all the instructions to make the flight. And oh, miracle, the whole trip that I had a little bit of free time that I could take a couple of days to go and fly to that other city. So long story short, I went through my trip, went back into the home office in Tokyo, found my miso waiting for me in the fridge, stressed a little bit about bringing the miso over an inside flight, but it was not an issue. And then my friend picked me up at the airport. He brought me to that lady's house, apartment. He stayed with me for a full hour, translating everything that we said. And the most beautiful part is I was so emotional. I came in, I said hi, introduced myself, bowed, and then I said, this is the miso that I made with your son, Jin, before he died. And I gave her the miso thinking she's going to cry, she's going to be emotional, something's going to happen. And yes, something happened. She looked at me, she took the jar that I had preserved religiously to not be opened. And without any hesitation, she opened the jar, put her finger in, and tasted the miso and said, not too bad. And I was like, so grateful that I had that moment with her. But that's an example of what a dream can look like. You set yourself to this target and you have no idea how it's going to happen, but it does happen. And it's a beautiful thing. So I will skip the last story here just to close with this quote that has really made me think when I was a teenager. You are always free to change your mind, decision, thoughts, and choose a different future that I can imagine, or a different past, and that I could not imagine when I was a kid. But now I know it's true, because I know you can change how you feel about the past. So I wish you the best. And if you need any help, just schedule some time with me and we can talk. Or I'll just put back the slide that I had before so you can see the QR code. Join Basecamp for a whole month for free. And then we can just discuss what your options are and take it step by step. So I will close the recording now, and then we can just chill here for any questions that you have. Thank you so much.